Enugu under Governor Peter Mba has witnessed major developmental strides as the state keeps moving from strength to strength. To add to the many projects being executed by the governor, Governor Mba has unveiled a state-owned airline, Enugu Air, describing it as a giant leap for the state and a gold standard for government-private sector partnership. The inaugural flight of the state-owned airline took off on Monday, marking what the governor called a historic moment for Enugu. Speaking at the launch, Mba said the achievement aligned with his administration's vision of transforming Enugu into a premier destination for investment, living and tourism in Nigeria. Minister of Aviation Festus Keyamo, while inaugurating the Enugu state-owned commercial airline Enugu Air, charged the management of the airline to run the airline professionally and embrace public-private partnership, adding that they should not allow bureaucracy to kill Enugu Air. Well, joining us on the show to discuss the inauguration of Enugu Air, the current and future plans to make Enugu a travel hub, is Dr. Obi Uzo, the Commissioner for Transportation for Enugu State. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great.
Well, Dr. Uzo, thank you for joining us. Just as a way of preparing the background for this conversation, can you take us through the vision and the strategy behind Enugu Air? Governor Peter Mba says he wants to build an economy, raise it from 3 billion to about 30 billion, and make Enugu State a destination for tourism and investment. Now, what's the strategy? We have had the rhetoric, but what's the strategy?
Yeah, thank you very much. And as you've rightly captured, the key thing is to lift our people out of poverty. We are generally a civil servant state. So how do you create jobs for all these youths, educated youths we have in the state? So you need to start thinking outside the box. You need to be able to be proactive in shocking that economy and changing it. And of course, transportation still remains the vein that really powers an economy. So the key thing there is, how do you turn Enugu into a hub? It has always been the regional hub for the southeast and the then eastern region. But how do you actually turn it into a reality today? And what you're going to do is you need to look in a multimodal manner, from the land to rail to air. So for us, Enugu Air supports that strategy to grow hospitality and tourism, and of course access within the region. So Enugu Air launch is to basically be able to move our people, especially the Igbos, which are predominantly traders, move them from point A to point B within Nigeria, and also take them to do their businesses across West and Central Africa, and in future to the rest of the world. So that's basically the core strategies, to turn Enugu into that hub and change the economy of the state.
All right, now, looking at Enugu Air, some of the conversation in the aviation circles has been around the name Enugu Air, especially given that this is a partnership arrangement that you have with ExeJets, and many people are saying that without the AOC, you would not be legally allowed to use the air. So can you clear the air, no pun intended, can you clear the air around this use of Enugu Air? Because people in aviation are saying that this is somewhat illegal.
Yes, thank you very much. And that's why we say Enugu Air operated by ExeJet. Recall that the government of Enugu State is being piloted by an entrepreneur, right? And in fact, most of the people he has brought in to serve the people are also coming from similar background. So either you could wait for 2 years while you get all the different licenses together, or you actually get some of the needed ones and then partner with people, right? And that's why we are partnering with ExeJet. And then, of course, we are riding on their AOC. We have our air transport license. In next couple of months, we should be able to complete our AOC process. But most importantly, they also guide you, because aviation is highly regulated and a delicate thin margin business. So when you have already an operator that also is operating even SCL alone, it allows you to make minimal mistakes, right? So that's also why that partnership is just beyond the AOC, but also to be able to allow you to avoid some of the challenges that normally plague the industry.
Well, why not just wait?
So that's why it's good to have entrepreneurs running things, because our people cannot wait. So our people have waited for decades. They've waited where there is no infrastructure. Today you have over 10,000 kilometers of road which is planned, and we've already done about 2,000 of that. You have the transport terminals that is similar to New York Penn Station, which are going to be commissioned in a few weeks. You have the electric car manufacturing plant, which the groundbreaking has happened, bringing over 2,000 EVs and turning Enugu into the hub for EV manufacturing across West and Central Africa. What our people really need is jobs, and they can't wait. We have the second largest number of universities in Nigeria, right, in our state. So what will you do? You tell those youths that you're waiting for what?
Okay. So a lot of talk has been done. In fact, somebody was just telling me this, that how many jobs have they created in Enugu State? Enugu is one of the lowest states ranking in GDP, ranks 32nd in GDP per capita, one of the most indebted states with over 188 billion. I mean, I'm sure that's some of what the other people from the other talking points are saying. But I have always been somebody that disabused the idea of building airports and airline because of viability. Can we know the cost? This is what has cost the state government. Did they buy those jets? Did they buy those planes? What did it cost the state government? And how is the state government going to be able to recoup its money? What's the business plan? And what are the costs involved, as to speak? What's the intervention of Fidelity Bank in all of this? Did they provide a loan? What happened? We want to know the numbers.
Yes, of course. That's very important, especially for accountability and traceability. You recall that in the beginning of this Dr. Peter Mbah's administration, the first thing he signed was actually a social contract with the citizens, which is founded on three major pillars. You think of transparency, traceability, and accountability. And all these things are powered through the e-governance. For every single kobo we spend in that state, he's scrutinized, and he's always pursuing value for money. So when you think of the spending, yes, we bought those aircraft outright.
For how much?
So, you know, when you think of the purchase of an aircraft, one is just the purchase price. There is the licensing, the spares, the working capital, and other things required to properly set up a business. So it's not just right to ask specifically how much is the procurement, but when you look at the overall setup cost, you're going to be looking at a range because it's still starting.
So,
right? So you're looking at it $28 million to about $40 million.
For everything?
Yes, for the setup.
So for the plane, for...
One aircraft or for how many?
So we have three aircraft.
You have 3 aircraft?
Yes.
What kind of aircraft do you have?
We bought the Embraers because they are very suited for this type of climate environment.
So you have 3 Embraers?
Yes.
Fairly used, obviously. How many years have gone on them?
So, of course, the useful life is about 35 years, but these aircraft are under 10 years old.
Okay, under 10 years. So you have 3 of them for about $40 million, dollars with the setup cost and everything. When are you going to get that $40 million, back in investment train to the coffers when you guys start operation?
So, of course, we are starting gradually. You're going to see that in the first year of the operation of the aircraft, you're going to be generating about $39.1 billion.
In profits?
No, of course.
Revenue.
Any startup does not break even unless you're doing trade. But for something that will create jobs and change the future of the state, it is expected that this will break even within 4 years.
Billion, in revenue the first year or within 4 years?
No, the first year.
The first year.
Of course, remember, we're also going to be increasing the fleet.
Okay.
Even this year.
So when you now get to the 4 years, what will be the revenue projection in the 4 years?
So, of course, what we're seeing within the 4 years, when you look at it conservatively, right, you should be able to be throwing out about 60 billion, right?
60 billion
yes, in net profit, right?
Net profit?
Yes, after you've broken even, of course. But we think that it will take about, based on the business plan, it's going to take about 4 years to
So
break.
that's what your business plan says. In 4 years,
you're
60 billion net profit.
Yes.
And it will increase as time goes on.
Of course, and then for a state, right, that is most times dependent on the federal allocation, having such injection helps. But also what is more important is not even the profit coming from the aviation, is the ancillary industries that it unlocks. Think of bringing over 3 million tourists to Enugu State every year. Think of the hospitality business. Think of our youths that will be employed by this sector. Think of tourism and other things. Yes.
Okay, let me ask you about the airport itself. Enugu Air operates primarily out of the Akanu Ibiam International Airport, correct?
Yes.
At Enene. Now, that airport was so problematic for about 16 years. We are repairing the wrong way. We are trying to revive Enugu and all of that. What is the status of that airport today? Particularly the problematic runway, the expansion, the repairs, and all of that. That's one. The second thing is about sustainability. Yeah, I like the enthusiasm of Governor Peter Mba. He wants Enugu Air and all of that. But are there any guarantees that when Peter Mba is no longer governor, that this will be sustained? Or that the whole idea itself, which is the basic question, will be profitable?
Yeah, thank you very much. The first question, which is the status, the current status of the Akanu Ibiam International Airport. As you mentioned, that airport has predominantly been ignored for over 16 years. The international wing is just about 71% completed, is not completed. But since this start of this administration, led by Dr. Peter Mba, he has rolled his sleeves and worked with the presidency, which have been very supportive of the plight of Enugu people. And they are now working on the concession of that international airport, which will allow it to be completed, because aviation is also now in the concurrent list. So it allows for private investors to come in and support the completion. And of course, even the development of the cargo operations, and of course attract other things like the MRO, which will create high-paying, high-quality jobs in the state. So we believe that with the concession almost completed, hopefully that in the next 1 year, that airport should be fully operational with the international wing open, extension of the apron, and also the construction of the cargo terminal. Then on the sustainability of the airline, the good thing is that we've also had other subnational, at least one subnational, that have done this. And I just saw the other day their reports. They've successfully, of course, changed the administration. They've also had a full term by a CEO, and they've handed over to another CEO. And they even reported, I think, 6.9 billion in net income after almost a loss in the previous year. So what we see is that for a state like Enugu that is being run by real business people that have track record, we are taking note, and what we are doing is to make sure that this airline belongs to the state.
So national, you're learning from?
Well, it's not that we are learning, but what we're saying is there is already a track record in the country.
Name it.
Akwa Ibom already
Give them their flowers.
Of course. They've done an excellent job. In terms of service, I know most people will agree that prior to the entrance of Enugu Air operated by ExeJet, that Ibom Air is one of the most prompt and customer-friendly airlines. And they've transitioned administrations and even in terms of leadership within the organization. So for us, we are even taking it a notch higher. What are some of the lessons from those players? And even the normal privately operated airlines. How do you make sure that spare parts is not an issue? Because one of the issues that plague aviation from our feasibility is that they don't have a proper strategy for spares. So that's one of the issues. So how do you make sure that you partner with the manufacturers of the airline and solve that space so that there is limited downtime?
But I asked you about profitability. Is this just a prestige, project, or there is a strong calculation that this will be profitable?
Of course.
Because it may not be profitable.
Of course, if you look at the leadership.
How many people will go to Enugu?
This will shock you actually since the inception of this administration. If you actually try to buy a flight to Enugu, if you're not buying 2 days ahead, you will struggle to actually find a plane. But that's because insecurity is now under control. There is a lot of economic activities happening, which is why people are coming. But don't forget that when you think of Enugu, you shouldn't just think about it as the 6.8 million people. You have to be looking at it as a block, because that is the home, right, and the hub for the southeast. A typical Igbo trader going to selling things in Gabon will rather actually move from Onitsha, enter Enugu, eat his abacha or okpa in the morning, and then board flight to go and do his business. And we also want to come back directly to Enugu and go to their houses, right? But of course, those options never existed. And that's why we're very proactive. Yes, as a state, it goes...
It's closer to Onitsha.
But remember, there is also the cultural affiliation to some of these things. And when you think of the profitability for a state-owned aviation business, it goes beyond the net income on that specific business. Where you actually harness the true benefit of it is other ancillary industries that will be unlocked. Other ancillary, think of hospitality. Think of tourism. Even now, when we are doing the medical Enugu International Hospital, how will people come in there? And these things were even projects that were started prior to this current administration. But this administration understands the value for money, for the citizens' money. You have to complete these projects and make sure that they do what they were originally set out to do.
Okay, at the launch there was talk of the PPP, private-public partnership, with regards to the airport. I want to know if that applies to the airline as well, and if so, what's the nature of the relationship between the state and the operator? Is there a special purpose vehicle that has been created to drive this? What are the finer details?
Yeah, of course, on the infrastructure like the airport is a PPP that is handled by the federal government, ICRC, Ministry of Aviation, FAN, and all the key important regulators within that sector. On the airline, it is state-owned. It's owned by the Enugu people. So the agreement is more of riding on the AOC, and the management agreement is not a JV structure. It's a management agreement.
Okay, so when we look at the equity structure, it's Enugu that owns 100% equity. The loan, you got the loan from Fidelity Bank, right? If you got the loan from Fidelity Bank, what's the repayment tenure like on that loan? Because this is public accountability, this is state resource. And hope is not going to impact the downline. And I'm having a couple of people sending me questions, and they're saying that your financial projection of 60 billion net profit in 4 years, is it going to be viable? Take into consideration high level of inflation. Okay, there's some stability with currency now, but currency probably fluctuations and the likes. And they're saying, isn't it time to be able to look at that review and all of that? And what's the moratorium at which you're going to pay back the bank? So what's the equity structure like?
Yeah, the equity structure, as mentioned again, this is a state-owned 100%. And in the administration, it frowns at getting loans. So in fact, if you come to Enugu, you see that this administration is able to be doing a lot of things at the same time. Whether the strides the administration is making in the education sector, with over 260 smart schools, that gives the opportunity to a village boy the same way as somebody training their kid in the UK, right? And then you look at the healthcare. We have over 260 primary health centers. You look at road infrastructure. Look at resurrecting moribund assets. You look at hospitality, the five-star hotel, the operationalization of the former defunct presidential hotel. So
as I was saying, so the tenure on the loans, did Fidelity provide the loan, or is state resource? Is there a tenure on the loan? How is all of that?
So remember, how you should think of this thing is that aviation, like airline, is generating cash. It's throwing out cash flow, right? So based on that cash flow, that's what repays the loan. But of course, you have to give bank comfort in case when you miss some of those, whether you miss it by 20%, they take comfort. So that is actually the guarantee that you're giving the bank, that their money will come, whether the business is able to generate all that or not. So that is the structure. Of course, the bank normally will look at a 4 to 6 years, but in this case, it's beyond 4 years because they see the viability of that. Yeah, it's a longer tenor loan, of course.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Obi Ozo, we wish you all the best with Enugu Air, and send us our tickets. We'll be here waiting for our trip to Enugu.